Okay, just a few service tips on servicing your HYW2500P pressure washer from Hyundai. First of all, we'll concentrate on the air filter. The air filter is located under this box here above the carburetor. There's a wing nut on top, which can be unscrewed by hand. If you remove the wing nut, basically the lid will then just lift off, revealing the air filter. The air filter itself can get quite dusty. It all depends on the sort of environment that you're using the machine in. If it's extremely dusty, you might have to clean it off about once every 10 hours of use. But typically about every 50 hours if it isn't in too dirty an environment. So you can unscrew the second wing nut, which is what retains the filter. And the air filter unit will just lift off. You'll notice that the air filter has a foam outer, which can be removed, and a paper inner. Now, if you remove the foam outer, you can blow that off with sort of a high pressure air gun, or you can literally blow it off. And the paper element inside, if it does build up with dust, you can remove that by tapping it against a surface. Obviously, don't bang it too hard or you'll dent the unit, but tap it against something fairly substantial and the dust will come out. If it gets too badly clogged, then you basically need to replace the filter. So to put it back on, basically exactly the opposite of the way you took it off. Back on in the same orientation. Back on with the first wing nut. No need to go too daft with it, but just hand tight with the wing nut should be enough. And then back on with the cover. And back on with the nut. There are some brief instructions on here about how to clean the air filter that mentions tapping it and what have you and cleaning the outer. And there we are. That's how to change the air filter or to clean the air filter. Having been through the air filter, the next part of the service would be to change or clean the spark plug. I'd recommend you do this when the engine's cold, because this being the exhaust gets very hot and you're going to have to get your fingers and hand in here, and there's a likelihood you could burn your hand, so do it when the engine's cold. So the spark plug is located between the air filter and the exhaust, and you'll see the black cap, and you can basically pull it off the spark plug and that will reveal the spark plug in the hole there. Right, in the kit comes spark plug spanner and the bar. So if you drop the spanner down over the plug, it'll sit on the hexagon, put the bar through the spanner and loosen anti-clockwise. You should be able to then just continue turning . And out comes the spark plug. You can normally clean a spark plug with a soft wire brush if it's not too worn or if it's just dirty, and then dry it off and refit it. But normally if it's a full proper service, we'd recommend changing the spark plug. In this particular one, it's an F6TC. They're readily available from ourselves. To refit the spark plug, I'd always recommend starting it off by hand rather than using the spanner. And this basically stops you cross-threading the spark plug because you won't be able to cross-thread it with your fingers. So get it in 3 or 4 turns by hand. Once you've got it well and truly in, back on with the spanner. Screw it in as far as you can do by hand, and then back in with the bar. Tighten the spark plug. Shouldn't need too much force for this, and the length of leverage you got on the bar is about right. Once you've refitted the spark plug, locate the cap back over the end, push it down firmly. And there we are. That's how to change the spark plug. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is to change the oil in the actual pump itself as opposed to the engine oil. So this is the actual pressure pump, the black unit with the brass head, and underneath it's got a brass drain plug. To remove the oil from the pump, you'd have to undo the drain plug and let the oil flow out into a suitable container. So basically, if you place your suitable container underneath at the ready, loosen off the drain plug. And undo. Once you've removed the drain plug, try not to drop it in the oil, which is probably what normally happens. Not on this occasion. And the oil will drain out into your container. Probably takes about 300 ml of oil, something like that. Normally recommend doing this after about the first 25 hours of use. And then again, as with the engine oil, probably about once every 100 hours. You can go through this after you've just been using the pressure washer and everything will be still quite warm, and that will help more of the oil flow out quickly, the same as with the engine oil. So this is a brand new one, so for the purposes of this, we'll say that the oil has come out, and then replace the drain plug. And tighten it back up. There we are. To refill the pump with oil, it's got a red filler plug on the top. You can remove the little red filler plug. And again, you can fill it using the same oil as goes in the engine, which is a 15W40 oil. And it's the same oil used in the pump as it is in the engine. It's 1540. A 1030 would be okay, but 1540 is the typical oil. When you're filling the pump, just turn it round. You'll notice on the side of the pump there's a little clear hexagonal sight glass. Typically around about halfway up the sight glass with the oil. If it's a little above, don't worry, but it certainly don't fill the pump to the very top. But once you've seen it sort of just, center or slightly above, somewhere around there on the sight glass, that's absolutely fine. So once you've filled it with oil, replace the filler plug and tighten. And that's the oil changed in the pump. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is show you how to drain the oil and refill the engine oil on your pressure washer. It's a little bit awkward to get to, but again, the engine drain plug, if we can zoom in on this, is this nut here on the side of the engine. You'll see that there's a slot underneath for you to get your spanner through and for the oil to run out of. So again, a suitable container underneath the machine, and that will catch the oil. So, coming up from underneath, I use a little ring spanner like this, but pretty much any sort of flat ring spanner would do, or perhaps a socket. If you come up through the slot underneath, put your spanner on the nut, and undo again anti-clockwise. Couple of turns just to get it loose. Get your container underneath, and then you can basically unscrew it by hand and remove the nut. The oil will then run out of that hole, through the slot in the frame, and down into your container underneath. Once all the oil is out, you can then tighten back, put the plug back in, tighten it up, remove your container, and tighten back up the sump plug using the same spanner. There we are, nice and tight. That's the oil removed. You'll see that there's two orange plugs on the engine, one on both sides, but this one's probably the easiest to get to with your oil bottle. If you undo the filler plug, I'd normally recommend checking your engine oil level every day. Then you'll need to fill up the engine oil until it reaches the top of the threads, so that it's almost about to pour back out when you've got the machine on level ground. So let's just demonstrate. Typically a little oil bottle or something like this with a spout on would be the ideal thing. So you put it in and start filling the engine oil. Just about there. A little more. Okay, and that should just about do it. As you can see, the oil level is just coming to the top of the threads there. You can actually physically see the engine oil probably 2/3, 3/4 of the way up. And that's absolutely spot on. And then replace the filler plug. And you've done your oil change. Here we are. We'd normally recommend again after 25 hours to change the engine oil, and then every 100 hours of use after that. Again, the engine oil, exactly the same as used in the pump, 1540. Okay, and that's that.